Hello and welcome to this Awards International webinar in association with Customer Experience Magazine. My name is Ian Golding. I am a global customer experience specialist and have the real pleasure of delivering a series of masterclasses, customer experience masterclasses, in collaboration with Awards International and Customer Experience Magazine. In this webinar, I am going to spend a little bit of time talking about the phenomenon of digital, if I can call it that, the increasing focus on digital in the world of customer experience. I would be very surprised if anyone watching and listening to this webinar is not working in an organization that has an obsession, and I don't mean that negatively, an obsession with digital. I want to really explore why that obsession is happening, which I think is pretty obvious, but the impact it is having on customer experience, some of which is very positive, but some of which is not quite so positive. To start the conversation, I want to take you through a very simple, fundamental, basic principle. And the principle of what makes an experience in the first place. All experiences are made up of three component parts, the three parts that you see on the screen in front of you: functional, the accessible, and the emotional. The functional component of all experiences represents your product or your service. This is the bit of the experience that customers take as given. They just expect your product or service to do what you say it's going to do. The reason why this is important for anyone to understand is that we live in a world today where there are very few instances where the product or service that an organization is selling is completely unique. And because in most scenarios today, products and services are not completely unique, if an organization is going to differentiate itself, give customers a reason to buy their product and service above a competitor's, they need to go beyond the product or service itself. And this is where that second component comes in, the accessible component. How easy is it for the customer to do what they need to do? And this is where the world of digital has been having a huge effect on the world around us. The easier organizations are making it for us, the customer, to do what we need to do, the more likely it is that we are then choosing to use those organizations. The masters of the accessible experience, as I always say, are Amazon, who have made it so easy for their customers to be able to buy the same products and services that can be brought in many other retailers, with many other retailers. They've made it so easy that most consumers have now got to the point, in the place they operate, that why bother going to anyone else? This is why digital is having such a significant impact on the world around us in the context of customer experience. However, just to complete this equation, this simple equation, the third component that makes all experiences is the emotional one. The emotional one representing the way an experience makes the customer feel. And the way an experience makes the customer feel is actually even more important than the accessibility of the experience. Because the way an experience makes us feel is what we as the customer are most likely to remember. And what we are most likely to remember are three outcomes, one of three outcomes. We will remember very good outcomes, we will remember very bad outcomes, or potentially we will remember nothing at all. And as I will always say, remembering nothing about an experience is the worst emotional outcome of all, because it means there is no connection between you and your customer. The question that I want to explore further is, whilst we recognize how significant it is to make it easier for your customer to access the product or service, is the way you make it easier, is the way you apply digital technology going to have an effect on the way you make your customer feel? And I will argue it absolutely does. Digital is an enabler to the delivery of your customer experience. The better your technology's ability to meet the needs, expectations, and wants of your customers, the more likely it is that your customer will remember you for the right reason. And then they will keep coming back to you time and time again. And this is so significant because we live in a world today of digital disruption. I use the word disruption a lot, as do many thought leaders around the world. But we are, without question, seeing digital changing the way organizations interact with us as consumers. And these are probably the world's best examples of where disruptors, organizations, have come into traditional marketplaces and used digital technology to completely change the way we as the consumer interact. From Uber to Netflix to Facebook to Google to Airbnb, all of these organizations have leveraged digital technology to improve the experience that we have as the customer. They have made it so easy for us to do what we need to do that many of us have decided, well, why bother using traditional legacy businesses in legacy industries where it isn't as easy, it's not as convenient, it's not as accessible. This is why there is no doubt that digital is critically important in the advancement, continuing advancement of customer experience around the world. The interesting, I'm probably understating it, but the fascinating thing about this is when you look at this image is the realization that actually what these organizations have managed to do is to leverage technology in a way that has actually made it even more efficient and effective for the process to deliver the experience to the customer. It's incredibly clever how these organizations have achieved what they have without having the traditional handcuffs or ball and chain that legacy organizations have, and they still are struggling with today. When it comes to technology, there is an issue. And because the issue is that, like most things in the world that we deal with today, there are buzzwords that are generated and created that start to have a very significant effect on the way organizations make decisions. I will never forget when someone first said to me, "Do you talk about IoT?" And I gave them a very blank look because I didn't actually know what they meant. The Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, big data, all terms that have become hugely significant in the rhetoric of organizations. But these are all terms that actually make me very, very nervous as someone who is very passionate about trying to educate organizations to do the right thing for the customer. My concern about the advancement of technology and the fascination with the buzzwords is that organizations are not completely understanding how they should be leveraging digital technology for the right reason. If I just quickly go back to this previous slide, all of these organizations are managing to leverage technology for the benefit not just of themselves, but more importantly, for the benefit of their customer. But despite their success, despite legacy businesses seeing their success, so many organizations, especially legacy organizations, are getting it wrong. Sometimes they are applying digital technology, things like artificial intelligence, and getting it right for the customer. And as a result, they are benefiting financially. But more often than not, organizations who are trying to implement digital strategy are getting it wrong. And what we've got to ask ourselves is, why on earth is that? How can they be getting it wrong? When you see the just never-ending growth of Amazon, who only yesterday became a business valued at over $1 trillion, entirely leveraging their technology. Why on earth are so many companies applying digital technology in a way that isn't benefiting them? This is the critically important question that I am very, very keen to continue to explore. And what I'm about to say will be controversial, but it is this controversial debate that needs to be had. It all comes down, in my opinion, to priorities. I've said at least twice on this webinar so far that there is no doubt that digital technology is having a phenomenal effect on the way businesses are changing their interaction with customers. The problem when it comes to the priority is how organizations are deciding to use technology. Are they using technology to put the interests of the business first to make as much money as possible? Or are they applying digital technology to put the interests of the customer first to make as much money as possible? The consistent theme between these two options is to make as much money as possible. But unfortunately, what I and many other thought leaders and millions of consumers are seeing all around the world at the moment is that too many organizations are prioritizing the use of digital technology to put the interests of the business first, to cut cost, to save money, to make it easier for the business to deliver a return to the shareholder. Unfortunately, thinking about the business first when digital technology is being applied and implemented is almost always going to have a detrimental effect on the customer. In the last couple of weeks, there have been lots of conversations in the media, specifically in the UK, but I would suspect around the world as well, about introducing more artificial intelligence into the customer service element of the experience. Now, this is something that is commonly happening around the world. Organizations removing the human from the interaction and forcing, in inverted commas, customers to have to interact with machines to get the answers that they need. But again, the question is, why is that being done? Is that going to improve the experience for the customer? Is that going to make it easier and quicker and more effective for the customer to get the answer they need? Or is it just going to save the company money? because they can employ less people to perform a task. This is the million-dollar question. And this, unfortunately, in my opinion, is the mistake that too many organizations are making. And to bring this to life a little bit further, I want to share with you the 3 organizational layers of customer experience. This is very, very important and really cuts to the chase of how, again, in my opinion, organizations need to be thinking about how to best apply digital technology to make the most money. Every organization, when it comes to customer experience, have 3 fundamental layers. The first layer is the customer journey. Every organization on earth has a customer journey. They always have had. However, it is only in recent times that many organizations have become consciously aware of the fact that they have one. The second layer are business processes. Unlike customer journeys, organizations have been very consciously aware of business process for decades. The problem is that in most cases, business processes were created and implemented without the organization knowing there was a customer journey. So in almost every case, if you try to align a business process to the customer journey, you will find that they don't align. There will be things being done by the business, i.e. business processes, that don't even touch the customer. And we have to ask ourselves and question, why does that happen? Why? Why does that happen? Why are we doing things that the customer doesn't even see or interact with? There will be processes crossing over each other. There will be duplication. There'll be gaps in process. All of this is because processes were put in place without anyone knowing there was a customer journey. And it gets worse when you get to the third layer, the technology layer. Because like business process, most organizations, specifically legacy organizations, implemented technology without knowing there was a customer journey. And as a result, more often than not, the technology doesn't enable the process to do what the customer needs it to do. There are still millions of organizations all around the world right now implementing new technology, new digital technology, and they don't know what the customer journey means or looks like. The really important point to take away from this is that, again, I'm not saying that technology is not important. In fact, far from it. Digital technology is critical to the future advancement of customer experience. There is absolutely no doubt. But if technology is implemented without alignment to the customer journey, then it will almost certainly be to the detriment of the customer journey. If something is to the detriment of the customer journey, it will end up costing an organization money, and very likely to make it almost impossible to retain the advocacy of the customer. So as a result, if organizations want to apply digital strategy in the most effective way, they must start with the customer journey, not thinking about the technology they want. You need to go from layer 1 downwards, not from layer 3 upwards. Organizations need to understand this, because by thinking about the journey first and determining what digital technology can make it easier and more effective and more efficient for your business processes to deliver what the customer needs and wants, not only will you improve the perception of the customer, you will also make your business leaner and more efficient, And by making it leaner and more efficient, you will save money. This is not complicated, but businesses need to change the way they're thinking about this. They must not see technology as a simple way of saving money. Because if you think about it in that way, you'll make the experience worse. If you think about the journey and the pain points in that journey, what makes it difficult for the customer, and then ask yourself, how could we apply digital technology to remove that pain, to make it easier for our people to give the customer what they need? That will unlock the magic. And just as an example of all of this, I had the pleasure of going on holiday with my family this summer, and we went to Italy, and we flew to Italy with EasyJet. EasyJet are one of Europe's largest low-cost carriers. Like many airlines, EasyJet now in the airport will not allow you to drop your baggage with a human being. I, with my family, arrived at Manchester Airport in the UK. It was around 5 o'clock in the morning, very early in the morning. The queue to drop our luggage with EasyJet was unbelievable. It was almost the length of the terminal. And it was almost the length of the terminal because the only way we could drop our bags is by using automated kiosks. The problem with this is that the automated kiosks are not simple enough to use. Too many of them weren't working. Some of them had run out of paper. It was chaos. It was chaos because there were customers who didn't know what to do, and there just weren't enough of these kiosks working consistently enough to enable the experience to actually work. And the irony is that to make it work, it needed people, because every time someone got to a kiosk and it didn't work or they didn't know what to do, they needed a human being to help them. But there weren't enough human beings to help them. And as a result, the experience was awful. And what I remember about my experience with EasyJet wasn't the flight. Both flights were actually perfectly fine, but it was the chaos of checking in. Interestingly, on our way home, we left Italy from the airport in Genoa, where there are no kiosks. The check-in process was the traditional way, at a desk with a human being. It was simple, it was fast, it was painless. So we have to ask ourselves, why have EasyJet put automated kiosks into their airports in the UK? Is it to make the experience easier for us, or is it so they can save money? I will let you make and draw your own conclusion, but we have got to be able to keep asking ourselves, why aren't we using this stuff? Because ultimately, do I want to use EasyJet again? Do you know, that check-in experience has put me off? It has genuinely put me off. I really do not want to have to go through that chaos. And that's the only word that I can think of again. And in my mind, the only reason EasyJet have done it is to make it easier for EasyJet, not for the customer. Ultimately, what EasyJet have failed to understand is that this isn't about EasyJet cutting down on their costs of people in an airport. This should be about improving the experience of the customer, making it easier for us to do what we need to do, more accessible. So the next time I fly, I'm thinking, do you know what? I'm going to use EasyJet. It was so simple. I'm not going to bother standing in a queue again. I'm going to use them. But unfortunately, when we think back to the three components of the experience I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, the thing I remember about my experience is not that it was easy. In fact, quite the opposite. I remember chaos. That is not going to enable EasyJet as an airline to maintain the advocacy of their customers. Because in the world of digital today, in the world of customer experience today, we need to come back to what I call the Amazon effect. Amazon have got to the point where a regular customer of Amazon will constantly ask themselves, why bother going anywhere else? This is so easy. I'm not going to do it. Why bother going anywhere else? They have completely transformed the psychology of the customer, because now we don't care whether or not it might be a little bit cheaper somewhere else. We don't care that there are lots of different methods of going into stores and looking at different websites and different digital solutions to see products and services. I don't care that someone else's website looks sexy. What I know is that if I go onto Amazon, they are extremely likely to have what I want at a reasonable price that I can get quickly and easily. I don't have to enter my details. They have basically made me question every time, why bother go somewhere else? So in conclusion, digital and customer experience are without question inextricably linked. The never-ending advancement of digital technology will continue to transform the way we as consumers interact with organizations around the world. But in my opinion, the organizations that will continue to grow and grow sustainably are the ones who use digital technology with the primary purpose of improving the customer journey, not those who are using it to try and cut cost and save money. That is the key. And so you need to ask yourself, does your organization have a digital strategy? If it does, that's great. But is that digital strategy aligned to the customer journey? Has it been created understanding what the customer journey looks like? And are the solutions within that strategy aligned to making the journey better for the customer? If not, then I would suggest that you ask your leadership to consider whether or not the way digital technology is being applied is ultimately going to deliver the sustainable growth that most organizations would like to see. I want to thank you for taking the time to listen and watch this webinar. If you have any questions about this subject, the subject of customer experience, the subject of digital and how it connects to customer experience, then please reach out to the Awards International team. If you have a question specifically for me, I will come back to you as soon as possible. In addition, if you are interested in learning more about this subject and customer experience in general, then I will be delighted to see you at one of the upcoming customer experience masterclasses that are held in Dubai and in the Netherlands with Customer Experience Magazine and Awards International. Again, if you would like to know more about those masterclasses, please reach out to the Awards International team. Once again, thank you very much, and I look forward to sharing more thoughts with you around the subject of customer experience in the future. Thank you.